Hello, and once again, welcome to the PHA Podcast. My name is Stefan Gillum. This is your voice in affordable housing. As I always say, the PHA Podcast is presented by AMA Consulting Group, LLC. And today I have the distinct honor of having with me Mr. George Guy, who is the CEO of the Fort Wayne Housing Authority. How are you doing today, George?
I'm great.
Fantastic. So glad that you could join us. So glad that you could be a part of the podcast today. I want to start out. Let's get the journey. Let's find out how you got here. Where are you today, and how did you get there? Where did you start out?
Well, again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to actually tell my story.
Absolutely.
Kind of how I got into public housing, and also some of the work that we've been able to do throughout my career in public housing. Well, listen, I have to say I grew up in public housing.
Okay.
I think that kind of defines who I am, right? In terms of some of those experiences. My mother was a tenant organizer.
Right.
So through that work is actually what lifted us out of public housing, because the work that she was doing there, she was recruited to do some work outside in other communities. And so that got us out of public housing. But I think those experiences and watching her do public service work, and that kind of led me into doing I got into education, but through that work, I came out at a time when, drugs and those type of things were really heavy in terms of crack, meth. And so those challenges were great. So, when we were trying to address some of those challenges, we had to deal with public housing and workforce development and some of those things. So I think through that work and through those collaborative efforts is really what led me into the work of public housing for the past 17 years of my career. But, in terms of kind of what shaped me and whatever, those experiences in public housing,
Right.
Playing sports, doing the games that we did. Not all of them are, things
Hey,
that
you
they say
can't
on the
talk about all
podcast.
of them today. Can't talk about
But,
all of them.
the people, people use that terminology, that African proverb, it takes a village.
Right.
But when you're in that community, you live it every day, whether it's Miss Gertrude down the street or, old man George that stayed on the other side.
Right.
If you was doing something you weren't supposed to be doing, your mother, not only did they get you, but your mother was on her way to get you, and she was going to get you all the way down to your apartment. It was through those experiences that I learned about community. And so in, sports and everything like that. And I actually spent some time being a coach because sports were a real big part of what we did when we were doing that. So those things kind of helped guide me and really defined how I looked at the world, and really gave me some of the tenacity that I have to do with today. So public housing, growing up that way, really helped me.
So you say you spent 17 years, a career of 17 years throughout the affordable housing industry. What would you say is the most distinctive change or adjustment or growth space that you've seen over that 17-year career?
Wow, it's a good question. Growing up in it, you understood that there were some inequities. I think as I've gotten closer to it, understanding more in depth how those inequities have defined, how they can define people's lives.
Right.
When you talk about the intersections. And I think over the last 12 years, I've had to, I've really seen what that looks like. And I'm talking about education, access to healthcare. I never knew when I grew up that, there was no grocery stores. There was
You don't pay attention to those kind of
those
things,
type of things. And we had a school. Our school was, in terms of, the people that educated me, our teachers were the bomb. But I didn't know we were underfunded because of where it was located. But we had the best teachers. So I think that is probably one of the most significant things that I've come to learn in terms of how massive of an issue, of a challenge that we have in terms of making sure that our folks have what they need to be successful.
Right. You paint a really interesting picture there when you talk about what you didn't recognize back in those days, because there's a lot of people still today that don't know the concept of a food desert, where there's an entire 12-mile radius where there is no grocery store, no supermarket, there's no Publix, there's no Kroger, there's no Giant, there's no anything. And these people have to go so far outside of their communities in order to just get some of their basic needs. What would you say that upbringing, that understanding of community, what role would you say that's played in you developing some of the collaborations and partnerships that you've put together over the course of your career, and even at Fort Wayne?
Looking out that public housing window, you had a chance to dream and think about the possible within the impossible.
Right.
So when I had the opportunity to understand what we're doing from a community development standpoint, I wanted to make sure that we're building teams to reshape, thinking outside the box and reshaping communities. And then changing the understanding for that other child that maybe he or she would have an opportunity to see that there's a grocery store down there.
Right.
Because here's the deal. We saw some of that from a small business level, but again, we also saw it ripped out of the community as well.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And we saw the disinvestment that took place throughout the community that would follow. And so what I wanted to do was not talk about the problem. Let's come up with solutions.
Right.
And I understood that through collaboration and being at the table and really being able to use the platform that we have in public housing, because it is housing, it's the center of everything, it gives us an opportunity to really do that. And we've had a chance to do some of that.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. So, like, what type of collaborations, partnerships, that you've been able to form at Fort Wayne, and then just throughout what you're doing in the affordable housing industry?
Wow. Listen, the teams I've been a part of, we've been able to do some fascinating things through collaboration. I mean, we've been able to do permanent supportive housing for homelessness. Because when we talk about the inequities of this, we got to talk about homeless as well.
Right.
And so, I've been a part of, I think, 3 permanent supportive housing projects before they were even, 2 of them before they were even called permanent supportive housing, where they talk about folks that are homeless, chronically homeless, mentally
Right.
ill, folks with blood-borne pathogens such as AIDS and those type of
And
things.
it's so interesting you say that, because working in the affordable housing industry, working with as many public housing agencies that I work with, you would be surprised how often the homelessness problem gets overlooked in an agency and a bureaucracy with HUD that was created to fight homelessness.
I think that's changing now, particularly with Secretary Fudge. She recognizes that. I don't think that as an industry we really recognize it. When I came into the industry, I could tell you that there was an answer that we gave folks that came in, that when they came in and said, "Hey, I got this person that's homeless," and the standard answer was, "We're not last resort housing." That's changed over the years, and that's been great. So we've been able to change that. We've been part of the Balance of State for Continuum of Care. We're the Central Committee on the COC locally, because I thought it was important that our agency was at the table, and we've been able to do some. We're now administering the Emergency Solutions Grant, rapid rehousing, locally in our city, but also for the state in the city of Fort Wayne. So we've been able to create some opportunities and really change the perspective of how we look at these things, such as homelessness. So it's not just a stigma anymore, particularly when you talk about equity.
So how would you advise, especially for small, mid-housing agencies, how would you advise they make that step to start doing some of those collaborations, start getting some of those partnerships, start getting in touch with those COCs? Because for a lot of them, they've got their 300 units, they've got their number of vouchers, and they're just trying to keep that ball rolling every day. But how do you advise that they get out of that spiral to actually kind of pull themselves up to the next level?
The quick answer would be, go here, go there to this meeting.
Right.
I think that's what organizations such as NARO, FADA, and CLOF and some of the other housing associations, that should be our role and our responsibility, is to give them the tools and resources to understand how to map and get and access those relationships.
Right, exactly. Because I think that's the part that's missing sometimes. Like, they know they need to go out. They don't know where. They don't know who to reach out to. They don't know what type of organization leads to what type of partnership, which connects with which program that they're trying to fund or run or whatever that is.
Yes, and because, listen, we've been able to do something. I use the term "we" because on purpose.
Right.
Because there are limitations to what we can do, even with all the experience that I've had and things I've been able to do. But the other part of that connection is the partnerships. I just have a different experience, so I understand how to form some of those relationships. But even in the challenge of doing that, we've also been able to we've learned to understand what some of those relationships mean. So again, I think that these associations have a unique opportunity to give the resources, particularly for small housing agencies who are just trying to keep the lights on, so to speak.
Right.
And so by giving them the resources and tools necessary and training I think that it would do them a service. And also, I would say this too. Associations can also partner with some of these larger associations. So when you talk about homelessness, there's, homeless CSH is a community for supportive housing. We can use our platform to partner with these national associations.
Right.
Even when you talk about education, NEA, National Education Association, Educator Association, build those partnerships so then they can help build those with those institutions down at the local level.
Right.
So that we're familiar with one
Right.
another.
So
and have
when
those conversations.
FADA and NARO have connections with the
Yes.
NEA, then the members of FARO and NADA can then filter that down into that smaller PHAs. Yeah.
Yes.
That makes a big difference. So you talked about resources and training, right? So you are a founding member of the National Housing and Education Task Force.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about what that task force is and what it does.
Well, what it was a group of us, a handful of us from all parts of the country that were already doing the work in education, right? It wasn't, anything that was going on that we were, it wasn't a designation or some type of initiative. We were just all doing it. So collectively, some individuals thought it would be beneficial if we partnered with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. So first of all, we started the task force with this group, and we said, hey, we want to have a session each conference for each association. It started with NARO, and we were able to put on sessions each, and it started growing because everybody was doing some of this work.
Right.
And we're curious about it. And it grew to the point where we got the attention of Campaign for Grade Level Reading, led by Ralph Smith. And we built this partnership, which really talked about, because what studies have shown is that if kids have the ability they can read at a third grade level reading by the time they're in third grade or above, then they have better opportunity to be successful and competitive.
Got it.
So I fundamentally believe that education is the gateway out of poverty. So it made sense, and that thing has gone on for the last, I think 7 years now. We're getting another boat of steam now because folks are really paying attention to this because they really understand this. And we're really talking about how to do things within your own housing authority, but also how to build collaborations from different ideas from other folks across the country when it comes to building relationships with your local school districts and those type of things.
So how have you at Fort Wayne started to create this kind of like graduated system to where people are coming into the public housing and they're coming into the affordable housing system, but then they're also finding their way out. They're also finding their way to that next level of life and experience and being able to say that this was something that helped them to move forward in life as opposed to something that they just kind of sat in and stood still in.
That's an ongoing challenge. We were very intentional about having the team understand about inequities. And so when they were going to do the work, they understand what these folks are faced with. So they understand the significance and the importance of giving them an opportunity because they're not starting from the same starting line as you and I or someone else has. So we've been very intentional in building our programs that way. So again, that's what I'm talking about. We got to a point, though, there wasn't much more that we can do because of the regulations and those type of things that public housing did. So what we did was we started this process of we believed that there was going to be an opportunity for MTW.
Yeah.
Before it came out. We said, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about mobility. We're going to build all these internal programs to do this until we get the resources. And so the opportunity came, and then we got MTW. Now MTW moving to work now gives us another HUD resource now.
There's
because
a channel
it's a channel to move folks out. So now we're doing rent reform. So that's what we needed. We needed those type of systemically changes that would allow us to do the work that we needed to do, because sometimes the system doesn't allow them out, because if they start making an extra $5, then they can't do daycare.
They can't.
So what they do is they say, well, look, I'll cut back my hours because they got to
keep the daycare.
They got to keep the daycare.
There's so many places where I've had that conversation with people when they start talking about what the support system in America looks like and why people aren't moving out of it faster. And I tell them all the time, listen, the moment they get a raise, that support system is cut from them instantly. It's not, you get another 6 weeks of this particular support, and then as you're going forward, so you can build a nest egg, create a savings, get used to this new economic flow that you have and these new expenses that you have. Nope, it's you got more money, boom, we're taking whatever we gave to you away. And so for them, it makes more sense to say, well, then I just won't make more money because I need to keep my daycare, or I'm not in a position where I can do without the food stamps quite yet, or especially the insurance, the Medicaid. You know, I need those different resources and those different support systems, and I can't do without them.
And I'll say this to that point, and you're exactly right. That the other problem with that is that as the economy gets the way it is, wages are being suppressed now,
Yep.
and we understand that too. So even
And
if
consumer prices are going
consumer
up.
prices are going up, and so even if I make this amount of money, you know, it's not a livable wage.
Right.
Most of the people that are on our program are working, but their wages, they're not making enough.
Yeah.
Right. So
The
I
days
think
of $30,000 a year being worth something are completely gone.
it's not.
Yeah.
And so what we have to do again, and I talk about this, we have to change the system. And we have to make sure that we're partnering with private sector to make sure that they understand that, you know, there's a need for growing wages. And we got to make sure that our folks are ready and competitive to get those jobs as well. So it's a combination of things. And I think that, you know, the right answer is we haven't figured it out yet, but we are figuring out, and we're trying to find the resources to make sure people are giving people a hand up instead of a handout.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I have to remind people, it's a marathon. Because one of the things that we try to do at AMA is change the system, right? We've gone from the idea of, so we kind of started out with the idea of the hand up to hand out kind of thing, and we're still there, but we've moved to where we're looking at, you know what we do now is we kind of build trust. We build trust between public entities and private entities so that we can create some type of operational excellence that allows these agencies to now create that system to bring the hand up instead of the hand out, or the hand up instead of the hand out. And within that, what I hear you saying is, for a lot of agencies, it's important to create some internal programs. Don't wait on HUD to send the programs down from on top, but create some of these internal programs that are specific to your community and allow people to see those programs in action and allow that to kind of help you move things forward a little bit.
It's leverage.
Yeah.
Right. When I'm talking business, when we're talking business, if I want to do something with you, what am I willing to give up?
Right.
What do I have that I can? And I think that's the approach that we have to give when we're talking to folks about either giving us more money or this regulation or whatever. We have to be able to say something in order to get something.
So you are in a very specific and interesting place right now because you are running for president of NARO. Tell me a little bit about what your platform is in running for that presidency and why you decided to run for presidency at NARO.
Oh boy. So the platform is housing, equity, and community.
Okay. What does that mean? Housing, equity, and community.
I'm glad you asked that. We're in the business of housing, and I think housing is essential. We've been talking about how important where you live determines, you know, what kind of school you're going to go to.
All kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
Credit score, insurance price.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's the centerpiece. So, but we also have to understand that we are also working in communities, and so we're a part of communities. And that we need to make sure that we're more visible in communities. But we also, in order for us to do any of that, we also have to understand how important equity is, because we're dealing with a system of a bunch of inequities wherever you turn.
Right.
So my idea is that those are the things that I'm about. I think that we're in a unique position where we can look at these things from that lens and really be about what I've built my career on is empowering people, but also empowering residents and those that have been marginalized into getting them in better places and spaces. So I think what I was thinking is that the things that I'm talking about that we need to do as associations and as an industry,
Right.
I can't talk about it, man, if I'm not going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And I think during COVID was a unique time when we were all forced. I was good. You know, we were doing our thing in Fort Wayne, MTW.
Yeah.
And doing some of the things I'm talking about.
The ball was rolling, the engine was running.
But I was forced, because of this thing we call servant leadership, to look at what are some of the opportunities of why some of these other housing authorities and other places don't have these resources.
Right.
And understanding the history of this institution, they don't have the resources. So here's a platform that we can do to start the change, and not be a talker and just do something about it. So we've been able to communicate and articulate that message throughout the country. People are, what I'm finding is everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to roll up their sleeves and do it. It's not me. Yeah. It's just me recognizing what's necessary to get to the next level. Right? You're talking about even bringing in
Right.
new leaders to think about this. So we got a lot of big ideas. I told you I'm a dreamer, but I think that a lot of people are thinking the same thing. So we're going to bring all those great minds to the table and hopefully be able
Well,
to change.
I think you're right, because one thing I'm noticing in the PHAs that I speak to is that people are really looking for fresh perspective, right? The days of even the people who have been spending the last 20 years saying, but this is how we've always done it, are starting to be like, and I'm tired of doing it that way.
That's right.
You know? And so people are looking for fresh perspective. They're looking for a new way to maneuver, everything that HUD has put in place for them and in the way of what they're actually trying to achieve. And so I think it's really important to bring some of those new perspectives, some of those different perspectives, people that are working their minds in other areas. It's like having one big design thinking tank, and bringing them to the platform and saying, listen, this is what affordable housing looks like right now. And this is what we think it should look like in the future. This is what we think will be best served for the residents that we are looking to serve. How do we get there? Good. And I think it's important that we do that. So, gonna ask you a question I ask everybody.
Okay.
It's hot seat time.
Okay.
Not really a hot seat. So what I want to do is I want to hand you a megaphone.
Okay.
Right? I'm handing you this megaphone. It is a magical megaphone.
Okay.
It's pink, rainbow colored. It's got sparkles on it. It's super magical. Right? When you click the trigger on that megaphone, what happens is everybody in the affordable housing industry instantly stops what they're doing, listens to you, and pays attention to what you're saying. You get their undivided attention. And not only do you get their undivided attention, they're going to implement whatever it is you say.
Okay.
So when I put that megaphone in your hand and you pull that trigger, what do you say to the affordable housing industry?
Oh, wow. So you just hit me there. I said I was a dreamer, man, but sometimes reality steps in, right?
Yeah.
So what I would say is that we have a lot of internal, external challenges. One being, and I'll say this, is that our relationship with HUD. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the roles that I think HUD plays and Housing Authority plays.
Right.
So I think let's start there. My megaphone, I would say, let's get in the room, define, you've all changed, leadership has changed, you all are thinking about this from a different perspective at HUD. Here's our experiences, this is what we're seeing, what our roles have changed too on the ground level. Let's figure out with the flexibilities and everything that we need on the table to do what we need to do, let's figure out a way that you can do what you need to do and we can do what we need to do. So that would be the first thing. I think that the next thing is that I think that we need to, there's one of many, but I'm gonna say this is something that we need to bring in and we need to have programs to usher in new leaders.
Right.
We got to do more to cultivate our folks that are in-house right now into leadership, and we got to do more to recruit those that are out there that are this new generation. They want to make a change. They're curious about policy. They want
and public housing industry is such a great space to do that, but a lot of them don't know it exists. They don't know that there are opportunities there for them to really invest themselves and make the kind of changes that they want to make in the world.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's real true. You got to get a lot of that young, fresh blood. You got to get that fresh blood on, man.
That's right.
Yeah.
But maybe we recruit some other people from other industries. They got me.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes that's what's necessary. You recruit people who have been, they've been killing it in project management. They've been killing it in the banking industry.
There you go.
They've been killing it in the entertainment industry.
That's it.
Everybody, and they've been killing it in healthcare. Everybody has a different perspective on the same thing. That old moniker of the two people looking down and one person sees 6 and one person sees 9. Now I have a whole different place that I take that because there is an answer. Somebody wrote it down. But that perspective comes from where we stand. And so somebody from the healthcare industry can come into the PHA industry and be like, well, why don't you guys just do this? And it'll be something we never, ever would have considered because we don't have the history and the background that they have.
Absolutely.
So, all right, any last words of wisdom that you want to give to anybody listening to the podcast, watching the podcast today? Go ahead and point you right into that camera. You just tell them whatever it is you want them to know.
Listen, this is a moment of truth. This is a moment we can think big. And I think that we have proved that we've been bigger than the moment. I think that we need to think big. We need to do big things. We need to make sure that we're expanding our partnerships. We need to do more in collaboration. I know we can do it. I know that you all are sitting there just trying to figure out how. So I think that right now is our time to really be thinking about the moment and how we step up and be who we need to be in the communities that we serve.
George Guy, Fort Wayne Public Housing Authority, thank you so much for joining us, my friend, and we'll be sure to have you back.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This is the PHA podcast presented by AMA Consulting Group. My name is Stefan Gillum, and we will see you next time.